Welcome to the Mixorcist.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mixorcist. Welcome to the Mixorcist, guys. Exactly. EB, are you there?
Eric's not here, Mrs. Torrance.
Oh, nice. Hey, we've been looking forward to this all year long, man. We've been wanting to do this Christmas episode with you guys, so it's time. It's Chris and Eddie here, bringing some festive mayhem and misery. And you've all been very good this year, so Santa can't wait to reward you with some excellent plug-in, what should we say, a roundup, right? The best of the year. So we talk a lot about the latest plugins. What ends up in our mixes? What do we keep reaching for? What's so good that you can't stop using it? So, EB, you want to get started? You want to kick it off?
Release the Kraken.
You know what, though? We all, like every single person I know that's listening to the show right now, they're all about, like, I've only got so much money to spend on plugins. Which ones are the must-haves? Which ones are the ones I got to buy? So that's what really, when we look at this roundup, we're talking about the ones that we use and reuse week in and week out. So hopefully that's not terrifying. Eric, did you fall down?
Yeah, it's a lot better now.
There we go. Now I can hear you.
That's gonna sound sick with like the Satan plugins on it.
The gurgle filter.
The gurgle filter, yes.
Let's do it. All right.
Let's do it.
Okay.
No, I was just saying I got my Kraken. I don't know if you saw on my camera, but I got my Kraken and the world's greatest eggnog.
Oh, I didn't see it. I can't see you.
Oh, shit. I guess the camera's probably dead or something.
You got to recam if you're in Zoom.
Yeah. Oh, well. Well, it's too late for that now, isn't it?
That's all right. We'll see you later. All right.
I'm also wearing the tea towel that I obtained as a gift at your Christmas party 2 years ago, or last year?
You scored big at that party, man.
Everybody wanted this one. I had to hide it from people.
Listen, the tea towel is the prize, man. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows that.
That's it.
All right.
So what did I miss while I was in the head?
We were just talking about how we were going to bring you, our loyal listeners, some serious value in terms of showing you the plugins that of everything we've covered this year that was released this year.
Oh, cool.
Actually, whether we covered it or not, what's ending up in our mixes? What do we keep using?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what really stood out to us? So do you want to start? You want me to start? Where do you?
Sure.
Where do you feel
whatever you want to do. I mean, I'll just add that 2020 was a big year for plugins and even beyond plugins, software in general. A lot of cool stuff. Just when you thought that you didn't want another EQ or need another compressor or care about it anymore, it turned out I think I bought a record amount of shit this year. So.
Yeah, it could be. I noticed that some of my favorites, like Plugin Alliance and Universal Audio, really weren't at the table with major releases. It's like, at this point, there's only so many Neve clones that I need. There's only so many, in fact, compressors. Like, how many flavors of compression do you really have to have? And even though the answer is tempting to say a lot, in reality, I found that a lot of makers weren't really coming out with a bunch of stuff that really, like, where's Sound Toys and all this, where we haven't heard a whole lot from, another one of my favorite, Softtube, is they're another company that just haven't done a ton of really compelling releases this year, whereas Acoustica and a couple of other, people that you've heard of, but maybe you've never really invested a lot in their plugs, came out with some stellar stuff. They've really moved the needle, in fact. So, you got your session lit up, ready to go?
Yeah, I do. Let me share it with you here.
Yeah, let's hear I'm interested to hear what your top 5 or 10 are.
Yeah. I can't pick which one is the top one. But in addition to, say, Acoustic Audio did have a great year.
Yep.
There were some kind of one-offs, companies that that either had not released something in a while or hadn't released very much, and they just came out with really interesting stuff, game-changing even. This is compressor here, for instance, that I'm showing right now, Unison.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Mm-hmm. If you remember, we tried to do a Unison episode and just stumbled over the controls so much because there's so many of them, right? But what that means So you can basically get this compressor to do or sound like anything that you want it to. It will do all of it because your ratios, your attacks, your releases, they're all modulatable. So you don't just have like one attack that stays still. It moves around based on these parameters down here. The detector is actually a multiband detector, and you can weight the different frequencies. So let's say I weight the high end really high in the multiband, like I can get it to DS. Or if I weight the low end really low, I can get like a lot more bass. And it's different than just using like a sidechain high pass because you've got RMS detection speed, peaks. You can set it so a peak gain. So if it crosses into what you're telling it is a peak, then you can shoot that ratio up to go really high and clamp down on it. Or you can alternatively tell it to, no, let that peak through because we don't want to crush that transient. And you can smooth the envelope. It's got memory effects, so you could simulate like optical cells and that sort of thing. There's a second envelope that just adds a bit of complexity and more motion to the compressor. Right. There's this button here, which gives you like some saturation. I mean, it would take a very long time to explain this. There is a video on YouTube. I forget who did it, but he just all he does is go through all the controls and explains what they all are and what they do, and that takes 26 minutes.
It's a handful. There's a lot going on there.
So, Unison is it's definitely on the more expensive end of plugins, but I think it's worth it. The sound quality is just spectacular. I did have some drums in here. Here's just your basic stock. I think it's one of yours. I think it's just like the Logic drums.
It is, yep.
And I'm just gonna rapid fire. Maybe I won't cheat the gain, the loudness too much on it. There we go. I just set this basically. I think I might have used one of their FET presets and then tweaked it to my liking. And it's just totally controlled. Still has some snap, letting a lot of that low end in. There are presets on here where you don't even need a de-esser. Like you can set it just to function as a de-esser. I love Unison. That's possibly my top pick of the whole year. Wow. Okay. It's up there. Another one, which I'm sure you'll get into later, is Coffee by Acoustica. Yep. This thing,
Demon.
I underestimated it when it first came out. I thought, oh, well, that's nice. It's going to have this quaint kind of vintage vibe. And when I want that sort of thing, it's like, no. There's a huge amount of tonal shaping in here. These EQs, for instance, the low band has a thickener on it. And so instead of a shelf, you could put the thickener, and that gives you a lot of bass. And then you go to low mid band and add another whole low shelf to it to get insane amounts of bass. Compressor's good. Yeah, this is up there for me. There was one that let me play an acoustic guitar that I've got here. Sure. Which is actually kind of in need of a bit of help. It's really bright. It's meant to cut through a dense rock mix, so not intended as a solo track, but you can hear how it's kind of bright. So I thought, let's just treat this a little more like a solo instrument. So I used Coffee here to get a bit of thickness on the low band. Where's the low band? And then there's a plugin that I found last week, which I couldn't believe it. It's not an expensive plugin. Unfortunately, it's Windows only. Eplex 7. Yep. And they've been making virtual instruments mostly, but they made this vacuum tube plugin. And I said, I'll give it a try. People were reporting really well on it, saying that it didn't have a lot of aliasing or a lot of like artifacts. I put the thing on, check it out. It's got... It's harder for me to hear it in the headphones now, but you see how it's just...
No, I can hear it.
Taking care of those transients. It's fattening things up a lot, giving you your saturation. And it's not giving me that kind of hashy digital wave-shapey thing that I get out of so many of these tube plugins. Yep. There's this switch here where you dial in your year, a little time machine, 2001, 1976. And 1950, I think. Basically, it's removing like quite a bit of top end, but it does also
top end. I can hear it.
Yeah, changes some other components in the model as well. Anyway, great stuff. If you're on Windows, check this one out because it's not expensive either. It's quickly got used in quite a few projects right away. What else? Oh! Here's another one of my top for the year. Actually, I'll leave those on. I'll leave those on. All right. Reverberate by Liquid Sonics. The makers of Seventh Heaven, yes, and Cinematic Rooms and Lustrous Plates. And this was, I think, maybe their first product, actually, the earlier version of Reverberate.
Yeah, that's right. Started
off as an impulse response player, and gradually they said, well, impulse responses can be boring. Well, let's add some modulation to it. And then they started developing the fusion system, as it's known. So if you've got... like Seventh Heaven, or maybe you have the Slate. Slate did some plugins with them, and they talk about the fusion system. And what that is, it moves the impulse around, either in time or in pitch, and you can modulate the actual impulse. So it brings your impulse responses a bit more life, a bit more motion to them. And now on this new plugin, it's crazy because they let you divide the plugin into split points. So I could split out the early reflection part or the tail part, and I can modulate them differently. In fact, I could also, if I want to pick and choose and go through the collection, I can pick one reverb that's like only the early reflections, and then another reverb that's only the tail. And you can blend the two reverbs, the two responses. Let me actually do that right now. We play the guitar. I'm gradually going to add in that early reflection impulse. And this is actually from a third-party RMX16, the Townhouse.
You hear it now, yeah.
There's a bit of delay going on, too, coming from Reverberate. And then I'm going to add... Well, actually, let me take off... Let me go to this reverb, take the modulation off first. And then I'm going to go back and add in the long tail, which is a cathedral. It's really long. It's effecty. It's from their M7 library.
Right.
Now where it starts to get really cool is when you hit this modulation section. Check it out. And that's the pitch modulation. So it's that shimmering kind of chorus sound. Now, let's say I wanted the modulation, but I don't want it to sound like a chorus, which can happen. You might need that. It's likely.
Yep.
So they, instead of just the pitch modulation, there's a time modulation option. That I tightened right up and got rid of the chorus. Got rid of the chorus effect, but it's still more alive than if I just turn off the modulation. Catch what that's adding. Just a bit of emotion to it. Anyway, for this sound, I just thought, go all out with something that's way too long and way too obvious. So that's another one of my favorites.
It's a very good one. It's great.
Yeah. And it will load up any impulse library that you already have. So if you're like me and you've collected over the years all kinds of different, I must have every vintage digital unit in that form, in the impulse response, and I kind of started not using them because the algorithmic reverbs were starting to get better, and I sort of sat collecting dust for a bit, but this is sort of bringing them all back to life, and
that's good.
What else do we have? Oh, DB Quadro. Great company. They released 2 amplifiers this year. Saturn, which is the Soldano, And then also Mercury, which is their Mesobugi. These are really high resolution, like almost spice levels of modeling accuracy to the circuits inside. Completely tweakable, so you can open it up and you can actually look at the circuit and change all the values.
Oh, no way.
The resistors, the capacitors. And you get the 4 gain stages and the tone stack.
That's crazy.
Same with overdrive. And if you know, the more you know about electronics, the more you can poke around in here. But even if you don't know very much, they will give you some tips immediately on like, just control this. You'll get more bass, or you can. There's a few tricks that they've shared on the forums. So it's great. You can change.
That's awesome.
You can oversample it, and you can oversample it up to 8,192 times, if you so dare. That's not for real time use. That's
no.
Yeah, so there won't be any aliasing if that's something that concerns you.
That's right.
They do have if you're going to do something like that, they have an offline renderer app. That's a separate app that you can load up. So you load up that app, you load in your presets, and then select your files, and off you go. Wait all night, and you'll get it.
So it's kind of like, so far, a lot of the plugins that you've been showing are about granular control. Like you can really dig in and get almost like synth level programmability and editability.
Yeah, I find that's often, if they do it right, that's often you can get a lot of bang for your buck that way, because basically if you've got a compressor like Unison that'll get you 18,000 different sounds and do them well, that's the trick, right?
Yeah.
If they can do them well. I mean, that's a promise that's been, that's been around since the dawn of plugins, right? Here's the one thing you need and it'll get all your sounds, but it never really did, right? Like the first line 6 stuff, it's like, I've got 127 sounds and none of them are very good.
But none of them were any good.
But now I think we're hitting a level where that second part of the equation is getting taken care of, because this amp sounds great. Unison sounds fantastic. Nice. Neold, which we covered, that's another good one that maybe I'll talk about that one in a bit. Sonsig was that one. Yeah, Sonsig, which I'm sure you're going to talk about that one.
So nice.
TDR Mollet. Now, this used to be a free plug. This was a free plugin for years and years, the original Mollet, developed by Vlad G. And just this year, they decided to release a commercial GE, gentleman's edition. The thing is nuts. I got some drums going. The same loop, and I just quick 2 seconds dialed in something just so you could hear the kind of snap on the attack. And now when they raise the attack, you're punching through there, right?
Oh yeah.
But there's like an Alpha Sigma mod here, which totally gives you a different form of attack. Hear that? It's almost like the SH mod control on Acoustica stuff in a way.
Yeah.
Although they're not using the look-ahead function, I don't believe, here. Anyway, this thing, you can dial in a great variety of tones as well. I wouldn't say as many as on Unison, but this has its own character, which is really cool. People who are into the equal loudness matching, it's got that. It'll do it for you. So will Unison. Just digging into this one, picked it up a few weeks ago, and I had used the free one for a long time, so I'm sort of familiar, but this does sound a bit different. Right. So arguably
very
improved. Nice. And I will wrap it up with Streamliner from Adapter Audio.
Oh yeah, I love their stuff.
Amazing utility plugin. If you know that they had that other one, what was it called?
Metric.
Yes, Metric.
Which I still use. I love it.
So that one would give you your loudness and your spectrum and just a bunch of meters, really, just to show you.
Well, it will let you do reference mixing, because you could grab a reference file and pop it right into the GUI, and you could A/B it really quickly.
Right. Yes, and you could
which was a nice
pull up the
feature.
spectral curves on your reference and compare it to what you had. Yeah.
Yep.
So I remember doing that a few times. So Streamliner's sort of not exactly the same idea. This is focused on getting your music ready to upload to streaming services. Yeah. So what it'll do, it will give you your loudness and the target loudness, which you can set. Say I want it at 15 lifts, or I want it at 20, or I want it at 3. It'll let you set your, and then it'll get the red lights when it goes over and stuff. It gives you a histogram of dynamic range. So,
oh wow,
this will be a pretty static signal. But maybe what I'll do is, it's going to be static. So how do I? Okay, I'll turn it up here. And I'll turn it down. Maybe that'll do it. Hopefully that was reflected in here. When you get to this section, you can see your song. You can analyze songs as well. And it'll show you like your verse, your chorus. You can see how the dynamics of the song move. You can load up songs that you really like, and it'll show you how the loudness changes throughout the various parts. A really cool thing over here is Codec Central. And if you see here, it's got all the major music streaming services listed: Spotify, Apple, Tidal, really YouTube, Deezer. Yeah. It shows you what. It shows you what target loudness the service is looking for. Right, for instance, Spotify wants -14 lifts, YouTube's 14, Deezer's a bit quieter, Tidal's a bit louder at -13.
Yeah.
And over here it gives you a normalization number. And so the services that do loudness normalization, which are most of them, this number will show you, I get +99. That means if I sent them this right now, they would have to turn it up by 10 dBs.
Right.
So consequently, if I was sending in a master that was too loud, say I gave them something at -9 lifts or something, then this would say -5, meaning that it's going to be turned down by -5. And then you can match it as well, and that helps. But here are where all the codecs are. So if I wanted to hear how, I shouldn't be trying to move this window all the time. This would be hell on editing. Okay, so here's where all the codecs are. And if I want to hear what it sounds like on these different services, I turn codec on. There's a little bit of latency introduced because of the encode-decode. How does it sound on Spotify Premium? How will it sound on the free version of Spotify?
Free version.
How will it sound on Spotify Mobile? How will it sound on YouTube at low quality? Because it has all of the codecs that all of the services use. So whether that's AAC or MP3 or Ogg Vorbis or Opus, it's got them all loaded in here, and it knows.
Nice.
So it's telling you how loud you should be and what it's going to sound like on all the various different services. And I've used this, and I've uploaded stuff. I play it back, and I'm like, the mystery is taken out of it. The guesswork is sort of taken out of it to a degree, anyway. Insofar as these things are always changing, but the company does update it too. So,
right. Nice.
And it really does make a difference. Like when you load, if you make a song that's too loud, if you make a song that's still like CD loudness wars kind of level, they will turn it down, and it probably won't sound as good as if you had given them a master that was just a little less hot.
Yep.
So this I think is a tool of the future, let's say.
Yeah, well, it almost feels like making music sound good by spreadsheet, right? But looking at all the numbers and the charts, but still, this is an important thing to know how to do and get cozy with. Oh yeah, the fact that your mix is going to sound different on different platforms, so you better target it properly. And this is something that of course, engineers and mastering engineers have been talking about for quite a while. But this makes this takes a lot of the guesswork out of it.
Absolutely. This is all stuff that you absolutely do need to know if you're going to be mastering engineer. But totally, how many people are and how many people do send their stuff out. We know that the truth is that a lot of musicians just mix their stuff and upload it. But they do learn about this stuff, and they do know about this stuff to a degree. And this is a tool that's just going to help you really fine tune getting that loudness right.
Well, I know all about what you want to know all about. All right. So as for me, there's a bunch that I keep using that came out through the year, and it's on almost everything I do. So let's start with, you know what? I think the real big one to celebrate this year is Pink 4 from Acoustica. And let me throw it up on a set of drums for you. Listen, on drums, the API sound to me is rock music from the 70s and 80s. So I love this plugin. If you want to harken that area, if you want to summon that era in your tracks, then you can't not have something API And if you're going to have something API, you might as well have something where the gain setting is completely continuously variable. On a real API and on most of the models of APIs, they're stepped in 2 decibel increments. Here, you're free to tweak this as little or as much as you want. So this is really fabulous. It has multiple API models for the EQ, mostly, not so many different ones for the compressor, but also for the preamps. So tons of stuff going on here. There's a couple of small complaints. One is that the high pass filter is fixed. So the corner frequency, you can't tweak it like you could on a 312 or a 512, I guess, if it's a lunchbox. But let's listen to how, for the first time, the compressor sounds. All right, so here it is with no compressor. Let's dig in a little bit. Oh, there it is right there. Just up the release a touch. Can even increase the ratio. Oh.
That's really killing it. That's awesome.
I mean, come on. This is one of the first Acoustica compressors that really sounded amazing to me, like almost as good. If I A/B this with the UAD version, it's tricky to pull out big differences. And it's got everything from proportional Q, all the stuff you'd expect out of the real API. So you have tons of color and tons of flavor here, and it just sounds great. So that's the first one. I would say Acoustica's Gold 4 is almost as big of a contender. Ooh. In that it's an all-in-one Neve sounding thing. And if you don't have it, you should definitely check it out. Another runner-up for...
Because you're getting all of the Neve EQs with that. Sorry, I went...
Oh, it's insane. And I can pull it up just so you can see it. But honestly, the Silica by Cush Audio was one of the ones that we really... had a good time reviewing. It's a great sounding. These guys are king of compressors as far as I'm concerned. It's different. It's boutique, but it sounds outstanding. So I would highly recommend Silica. On another Neve option you might want to try that came out, I think this year, that sounded so good was the Lindell 80. And they were one of the first ones to really nail the preamp. So let's see if I can just get this going for you real quick.
Oh, wow.
Let's really drive that. Oh, there we go. Come on.
Talk about peak efficiency there.
I mean, that's with, if I'm not mistaken, if the compressor's on, it isn't, let me just see if it's doing anything there before I open my mouth. In, out, gain reduction is not doing anything, right?
Wow.
So that's just the preamp. And you know, even the Acoustica Gold, hate to say it, but the preamps on that sound good, but they don't saturate like these ones do. So this was a really great plugin, not to mention the EQ and compressor section, which are outstanding. So this was a good one. And another one that came out earlier this year is the Universal Audio. Sorry, this came out later in the year. The Universal Audio model of the 2254 and the 33609 came out in Universal Audio's Dynamics pack. Let's just have a listen to it without and with real quick. Without. Right? Like if you want that sound, there is only one place to get it. I'm sorry. That sounds so good to me. UAD, they nail compressors. Like it doesn't matter who else you look at. If you want authentic recreations of LA2A, 1176, this thing, I don't know that anybody does it better than Universal Audio. That could just be me. Maybe some of the Nebula stuff. Another great one that came out this year was this wonderful reverb right here called the Sonsig Rev A, I think. Let's take a listen to it. Just let me fidget with some knobs here as I get my feet, but and let's just really quickly look at the big batch of factory presets. So you can either go by device or you can go by type. So here we've got ambience only. Not bad, right? And I think you could hear it there as when I switch the presets. Listen for the modulation. just for a brief moment, you can hear it moving in the 3-dimensional field, right? And that's partly because they have these different, almost like chorus settings. So 10 different ensemble settings that you can play with until you get a movement that you like. And then you can also play with the reverb width of the wet dry blend naturally. But let's go for something that maybe, let's listen to what a room sounds like. And again, they do try to emulate some of the famous devices. Let's try a chamber. Nice. A little too much reverb, but scroll on down to crisp room. Let's listen without. Very forward and in your face. With. Just puts it backwards in the room just a touch, right? And there isn't a hell of a lot of that basketball, robot alien basketball sound. So let's just have a listen and stop it. You don't hear that metallic after ring that you hear in a lot of algorithmic reverbs, especially ones that are meant for like low CPU.
The ping.
And then, of course, the classic wood room, right? Everyone, when they're measuring the Bricasti against the Lexicon, they always pull out the wooden room preset. So let's take a look and see what this sounds like for fun. Nice. Let's pull back the blend a bit.
That's doing what it's supposed to.
Exactly. Turn it off. Very dry, in your face, not reverberant at all, but and again, when you stop it, you don't hear that metallic ring. That's always a sign to me that this is a good quality algorithm. Another thing you definitely want to look at if you haven't seen it this year, let's skip the Neve for a sec. Let's go right to the Camel. So I won't play a sample of this, but if you haven't tried Camel yet, here is a really great emulation of a CalRec console that we had a lot of fun with. Another great compressor, first of all. And if you're tired of the harshness and the brittleness of a Neve, like if it's just, you're so over it, and API is not really doing it for you either, somewhere right in the middle is the CalRec line. I found that the frequencies here for voiceover is easy to get a nice punchy tone without making it too sharp. Right? Without having a peak that's too sharp, too narrow, because Neves can often do that. So I think you and I both agreed on almost all instruments. This one was a winner, and the compressor's great. The preamps are great on Camel too. They're really starting to shape up for Acoustica, so we love that plug. Get it? Coffee, I got to say again, man, I got a preset that I use for my professional podcast called Nice and Deep, and all Nice and Deep does, notice it doesn't touch the bass, so I leave it, in fact, I have it on high pass filter and it's set to 0. It's off. Then I got I have a little dip at 200. I have a tiny sharp increase at probably, where is that? Probably around 8. And then I have a little bit of an increase on I want to say it's 1.8. But the magic is in the compressor. So I have it set to Model 3 and I have the sidechain filter set to about 100. What this does is it not only leaves the bass alone, but it also pulls back, I think, and compresses the rest of the frequency, and it shines a light on the low end. So let's take a listen to how this looks without. Our ability to live our values is what determines our ability to break new ground, to deliver consistently, and to win at just about everything. That's this week. You hear it? It's subtle. Well, I always say that it's subtle, but you can hear it. What I mean to say is it's louder. So that's going to trip you up a little bit. But at the same time, the bottom end has just been given this gentle bump way, way down in the down lows. And in fact, the only other gadget that I found did something similar is a Manley Voxbox. Manley Voxbox, you have a 3-band section as an EQ, and it's Pultec style, but there's a bass peak, and then there's a dip control, and then there's a high peak. And if you set the bass peak to like not 22, which is the lowest setting, but 35, which is the first stop on the frequency selector, and then you dip it at around 200, what it does is it pulls out a lot of the muddy bass, but leaves the sub bass alone. And you give it a little bit of a lift, And on certain microphones, like think of like a Rode NTK microphone I used to use a lot. It's got a presence peak in the 5K range, which not a lot of microphones do. And when you compress it, if you're not careful, it's going to get ultra sibilant. But when you use the Vox box on it, you could compress it and then bring up a little bit of that sub bass in the 35 region. And oh man, it was magic for voiceover. It's like that voice of God thing that you want, right? And so this was the first, maybe the first compressor on Acoustica's line that really impressed us. And not only does it sound great, but if you try that trick, compressor 3, get the threshold pumping so that it's gain reducing about 5 to 10 dB consistently, and then set your filter for around 100. And you'll be rewarded with this nice, rich bottom end. So on standalone vocals or anything that could use a bass bump, you got to have coffee. What a great channel strip. And I use it on everything. And so if you have cream, which is similar, you might say, do I need to get coffee on top of it?
Yes.
I would say yes. The EQs are way more, they're just, the curves are so much nicer and gentler and not as resonant and not as peaky. Mm-hmm. And so even for instruments, dude, I love that plugin. And what else do I have here?
They've got more gain on tap too. There's certain models. You get more models of EQs. Like the CQ number 3, I think, true. And that has like 1.5 times the amount of gain as the other ones. And then you've got that thickener.
Yep.
Like, so if you have the thickener and then you can load up another low shelf on the low mid band, double up on your low end, and that's like stuff the cream can't even think about, right? I've done whole mixes with this, and I thought, like, I had this kick drum that I swore was going to need 2 EQs, right? Sometimes it's just that MIDI and it needs that much change. You have the 1 EQ isn't enough, and I could get it with coffee. I could actually. Yeah,
it's a dream come true, and I keep thinking I'm not going to put coffee on there. I don't need it, and then I put it on, and I'm glad I did. Here's another one that is a real treat. If you are a Neve fan, Universal Audio, if you're a user, release the 1084. The advantage being here that for UA users, this is a Unison plugin, but also it's got a couple of features. One is this, the upper band on a Neve can be a little restrictive if you don't like 10K. So here I think they give you 8, and then I can't read that if that's 10 or there's 10, and then I can't see if that's 12 or 15.
Yeah, I can't see it either.
I can't read it. Anyway,
yeah, 12 sounds about right, but they had 16 and then
it depends on the model. I think the more modern ones have 16. I could be totally wrong. The other ones are kind of as you'd expect, but you may remember that those can be a little bit limiting. So here you also have the addition of a low pass filter and a high pass filter, which 1073 models don't do. And then here, everything else looks kind of the same as a 1073. So a couple of just nice additions here. The ability to select your high shelf is kind of important when you're dealing with, especially something like a vocal where, we all know the feeling of pushing up a top band to try to get air. And then we're so enamored with the air that it gives us that we forget that it's adding a really sharp sibilance, right? So on the sibilant things like S's and T's and K's and stuff, it's adding a really high-end crackle that's almost unpleasant. So you have to use it judiciously, and sometimes you got to fart around with where do I want my shelf corner to be in the top end.
So you find let's see if we can hear some of the shelf at a higher frequency that helps with the sibilance.
It depends. It really depends on the mic, and it depends on we're talking a vocalist. It really depends on the vocalist too. So let's listen.
Stating our values is not enough. Our ability to live our values is what determines our ability to break new ground, to deliver consistently, and
let's switch up
at just about everything. That's this week on the Badass Agile podcast.
Here it's a little wetter. It's not as
we don't place the same importance on living them. And what can we do about it? Well, first, let's take a moment to remember why we're here.
There, the sibilance is so bad, but you can almost feel the ice in my breath. Like it's just too grating. Now that's a level of boost you'd almost never use on a Neve top shelf, but I do find the ability to switch around It's totally different on a different EQ, totally different on a different vocalist. Sometimes 16 sounds great because it adds air without touching the source too much. And sometimes it sounds horrible because even though the center band might be 16, in a sense, when I say center, like kind of the middle of it, it may reach down. That shelf may reach all the way down to below 10. So if you have a sibilance problem with a particular mic or vocalist, different EQs, different mics, and different performers, you got to be able to dial in a tone that you like. And with the 1073, it's 10 or nothing. So I do appreciate the fact that with that new, the 1084, you have a little more flexibility.
6 to 12 minutes.
The last one I'll mention is, I love this company. I like Empirical Labs, right? Who doesn't love the distressor? And one of the ones we reviewed this year was this guy, Big Freak. And I love him because there's a chart, right? So first of all, you can visually see, which I love, but look at the size of the display. Like what frequency you're on and how much you've boosted is never in question. What a breath of fresh air in the sense that a lot of the other plugs we talked about, like Acoustica, even those Neve ones I was showing you, I'm sorry, but whatever they're trying to replicate the stenciling on the original hardware, it's too small. You can't see it. And it's really, really hard to work with on a small screen. And I think more and more musicians and engineers are mobile.
You couldn't even see it on the originals, right? The original hardware, you can't even see it. And that's like three times the size. So,
I sit in my studio when I'm recording and I have a flashlight so that I can shine it on the controls just to brighten up, like, which one am I touching here? Because the lettering is so small. But so many cool features on here, including the ability to totally check out some of these wicked shapes.
The flat top.
Yeah. The crop top.
Nice.
This guy here, right?
There's a haircut you can set your watch to.
Yeah. Yeah. And look at what happens when you start messing with the slope. Check this out.
Oh yeah. Rectangle.
What? Come on. It's too funny.
No, but
I
could see that actually very useful for mastering.
100%.
You have a range and you don't want to hit it with a whole bunch of peaks. Right. Yeah. And you have in like maybe you only really want to give it a half dB in a very specific area. That could really help you.
Agreed. So I think we got some good picks there. My last one that I'll mention, got to say this, right? If you don't know the 2290 digital delay by TC Electronic, you missed the 80s. Like everything from U2 to Rush to, oh God, all of the synth bands and the new wave stuff from the 80s would have had the 2290 on it somewhere. For some people, it was a signature sound. And I think the beautiful thing about it was a modulating delay. So it was one of the best delays to combine modulation and delay to create some really cool, deep textural effects. And it even has the machine presets. So if you want to dig down and go back to the 2290, the stuff that was on the machine, here they are: ducking delays, dynamic delays, some pretty sophisticated stuff for the 80s, and it really set the bar. And it sounds incredible. I love this tool. So among those, I don't know, if you were to vote, Eric, what would you say? That's kind of my bit.
Wow, that's a long list, and
I got to add Luna because we haven't even talked
about Luna. That's a big development for
the
2020.
API and Neve summing modules, plus the ability to just turn tape on and forget it. Basically ignite a machine and just have all your channels and buses feed that machine and play into that machine, makes processing and making things sound analog so much easier. So if you just go and set up your summing and trim the headroom or the input gain and just turn them all on or turn them all off, depending on what you feel like, you can have all the analog vibe that you need without having to install a plugin on each strip. So I'm going to demo that for you. Maybe in a different show, we'll do an episode just on Luna. As a DAW, it's not as fully featured as you might want. It's only for Mac, and you can't run it without an iLock or a universal audio device. So it's pretty restrictive. It's pretty limiting. So people who hate it really hate it.
But it's free, right? Don't they give it to you for free if you have an interface?
Yeah. You got it. Completely free. Now, what's not free is the summing modules. They're like $300 US a piece. So they're not cheap.
Right. Do they go on sale, or do you think they're going to sell them Black Friday or something at some point? Or?
They might. Yeah. They might. I'm not sure if they've had a sale yet. Of course, I buy them pretty much the minute they come out, and after they do that, they hide the prices from you. If you're an owner, they don't show you the prices of ones you've already bought. So
it's like hiding the clock in a casino, right? So.
It's like hiding the knife in a casino. It's the same thing. But anyway, we should do a separate session on Luna, even so I can just let you guys hear what it sounds like to get a flavor for it. It's a drool-worthy digital audio workstation for sure. But I love it. So that's one of the big things in 2020.
There's already stuff I'm forgetting.
For us... totally. Oh, yeah. And I know y'all are going to sit there.
Some great plugins this year. The H9 series.
You all are going to sit there and go, how can you forget the...
How can we forget Cravey Q2? Cravey Q version 2.
Yeah.
Or...
we haven't forgotten.
There's a new one called...
I'm just talking...
sorry. There's a new one called Flatliner, which is supposed to be a mastering grade clipper and probably the 10th mastering grade clipper released in the last few years. But this is the one that the pros are all going like, oh, wow, this thing. That's a new one. There's one called Impact from Surreal Machines, which is a multi-band transient designer. And I played with that. And I got to say, I've never had an easier time getting a sound out of drums. I didn't buy it. What you can do, actually, if you go to Surreal Machines' website, they have a live demo page. It's a page that has the plugin on the page, and you can select from different loops, and it starts playing the loop. And then you play the whole plugin's right there in your browser, and you can play with it.
That's crazy.
And see what the controls do without even having to download anything. So that was also the very first time I saw that actually used on a commercial site.
Yeah, so that's another one to check out. I know we've missed a ton.
Oh, yeah.
I think what we wanted to do was show you the ones that we really believe in, because they're the ones that keep showing up in our mixes. The latest thing that Acoustica does or UAD does, there's a tendency to grab it and overuse it because it's new, right? So like, oh, this is the sound I've been searching for. But really, once you start to go back and comb through your collection, you'll have favorites that work well, sound great, and do exactly what you need them to do. Mm-hmm. And so once you know your tools, you keep reaching for the ones that do certain jobs really well. So these are the ones we showed you today are the ones that have been working for us and throughout the year have found a place in almost all of our mixes.
Yeah, I think it was an unexpectedly good year for plugins. Maybe not such a great year all around, but but for plugins and software, not bad at all. Maybe it was the extra time people had on their hands at home or something that just sort of drove it over the edge. But I mean, Acoustica made a lot of breakthroughs. There are a lot of companies, like one-off companies and new companies that are making some cool stuff. Tone Projects came back after a long break where he hadn't released anything. Affordable plugins are getting really good now, where top-end plugins are no longer costing $300.
Yes.
I think it's all positive, really.
I agree.
Yep.
So that's it. Happy holidays. I don't know what you celebrate. I'm a Christmas guy here. Myself. But
so Eddie, you got Ed in the head, and I got Kraken. So it's time to get cracking.
Hey guys, happy holidays to all of you. Send in your emails and your comments as always, your stems, your mixes, whatever. And we're looking forward to a great 2021 with you guys. Thank you for tuning in and for subscribing and being part of the whole Mixorcist deal, man. I mean, we have your souls now, so it can only get more interesting from here.
We've been going at this not for the whole of 2020. I guess we must have started around March or April and talking about it anyway.
Oh, yeah.
And we're getting some subscribers, we're getting some views, and we're getting people that are commenting and going, I keep making these guys, I like them. So I guess we will.
Yeah, and it seems like, I mean, the stuff that you guys really seem to like are the new releases. You like the early reviews, and you like when we talk about the new Kush audio or the new Empirical Labs, you guys kind of showed up in great numbers to check out the video. So we'll keep bringing you the new reviews, no matter who the manufacturer is. And we're just, trying to give you real talk about the stuff that we love and use and buy. And, it's just a privilege to do this. I mean, you and I have been friends since we were like 18 years old, Eric. So it's always a privilege to do this with you. And I wish all of you guys a happy holidays, man.
Happy holidays. Take care.
All right.